Today on Shop Nation, we finished the transformation from useless closet to very useful mudroom bench. This thing turned out absolutely awesome, and I'm confident that just about anyone out there can do the same. Let me show you how I did it. What's up you guys, I'm Travis, this is Shop Nation. In this video we're going to finish up the closet mudroom build that we started earlier. If you haven't watched part 1, go do that. During that video we did all the demo and repair work of the actual closet itself, and we built the frame for the lower bench. And in this video we're going to be finishing up the entire project. This video series is sponsored by Kreg Tool. And we're actually going to start by building the face frame for the lower bench and installing the bench top, which is going to be made from this giant, very expensive piece of butcher block. Now, one of the reasons why it's so expensive is because all the hard work's really done. I just need to cut it out to the right shape, apply some finish. That's basically it. So let's do that. Well, that didn't take long to find the first screw up. I actually cut out the wrong shape on accident, but thank baby Jesus that I could salvage it. That would have been a $360 brain fart if I had to scrap this thing. I left about a ½ inch on each side for clearance to get it in place. This is going to be covered with trim later. When it was all done, I ended up doing 2 coats of stain followed by 3 coats of polyacrylic with a light sanding between coats. Now I can go ahead and trim the baseboards to final size to allow for the face frame to slide behind them. And with that base frame nice and level, I secured it into some studs to keep it from shifting around. Okay, so now onto the face frame. I've already primed all the pieces to make painting a little bit easier, and since the cabinet is also primed, I'm gonna use construction adhesive instead of wood glue just to make sure they actually bond. And then I'll follow that up with brad nails on each. Now typically I would recommend building a face frame as one large unit and then installing, because you're gonna have a much better finish and flatness and your gaps are gonna be better. But due to the nature of how I'm wrestling this thing into place, I elected to install it piece by piece, which again just runs the risk of me having some gaps or sort of uneven pieces that I'm gonna have to smooth out later. All right, so now let's turn our attention to the back. Now I'm going for kind of a board and batten type look, and that starts with a thin sheet of this grooved paneling. And I'm gonna secure that in place with, you guessed it, construction adhesive. This time I'm gonna graduate to a regular caulking gun, just given how much I'm going to have to apply. And then once that is in place, I'm gonna go back with my new finish nailer and nail into all the studs. Has anyone seen my hat? That glare in the camera is blinding. Now, with the back panel in place, I now need to address the other walls before actually putting the board and batten details up. More specifically, applying wallpaper. Yeah. You see, my wife saw a cool pattern that's this peel and stick wallpaper, and she said, "Oh, that would be so cool in there." And I said, "Yeah, It would. It turns out this stuff is actually not that hard to put up. I was dreading having to put up wallpaper, but it's literally just a giant sticker. And it actually comes off of the wall pretty easy and doesn't destroy what's underneath, which means when you inevitably screw it up as you're installing it, you can just peel it right back off. We actually got this stuff on Amazon, so I'll link that down below along with anything else we're using in case you want to go check it out. And now with that wallpaper out of the way, I can come back and add the trim pieces on that board and batten detail I talked about earlier. These go up pretty easy, attaching again with construction adhesive and finish nails. Now I need to do some math to figure out my spacing between each divider. And bam! My thinking cap magically shows up. So much better. And what do you know, the second screw up. Now I thought I strategically placed this seam so it'd be hidden under a divider. Missed it by that much. Now most of the structure is done. Now comes the fun part. It's definitely not fun. Of filling all the holes with wood filler and then caulking all of the edges. This step is extremely annoying and it's very painstaking and it takes a long time and you have to wait for things to dry. But trust me, the end result will look so much better if you take your time here. Now I eventually also filled that seam in the back panel to try and hide my measurement shame. But first, let's thank the sponsor of today's video, and that's Kreg Tool. Now, to be honest, it feels weird to even be doing an ad for Kreg Tools because I actually use their stuff, and you've already seen it in the video. Now, in this video, you saw me use the Kreg Track Saw, the 720 Pro Pocket Hole Jig, and the Kreg Router Lift. And those are all things that I would use regardless of who's sponsoring the video. Okay, maybe not the 2x4 frame, I didn't really need pocket holes there, but you get the picture. But Kreg Tools in general makes really good stuff. Like take the monstrosity of cabinets sitting behind me. You can build that entire thing using only Kreg Tool products. They've got jigs specifically for things like concealed hinges, drawer slides, hardware, and all kinds of stuff. So literally projects even that big are totally doable using Kreg Tool products. Now if you want to learn more, you can go to kregtool.com where you can see all of their products. I'm also going to put a list of links down below of all of my favorite Kreg Tool products, most of which I already own. So thank you Kreg Tool yet again for sponsoring this series, and let's get back in there. I am honestly in awe of people who are good at caulking. It's really an art, and I'm basically a toddler with finger paint. But with that being said, even crappy caulking will make your project look so much better in the end. So just give it a shot. And with all of that done, I'm gonna get the first coat of white paint on the lower frame as well as the back panel. And to be honest, now is a time when a sprayer could actually really pay off because it's pretty much all details. Now I'm gonna elect to use a brush, which ends up taking a lot longer. You still get a good finish if you take your time, but a sprayer here really makes a lot of sense. One of my big reservations for not using a sprayer is because we have a 2-year-old, and having this all taped off and expecting him to walk through this area without getting covered in paint seemed like a tall task. In between coats and while that stuff is drying, I'm gonna knock out a couple other things I need, one of which being the upper shelf. And I was really scratching my head on how I want to do this, specifically how I wanted to mount it so you don't see any fasteners or supports. I also need to prime some additional trim pieces that we'll add shortly. Now you can see the method I landed on was actually to use pocket hole screws on the top, placed at the stud locations on the wall. Now this shelf isn't ever gonna hold anything really heavy, and it actually ended up working really well. Plus you can go back and fill those holes if you wanted to and then sand smooth. Now, in the midst of all that painting and finish work you see behind me, I also was making some shelves For this corner right here, it's kind of an awkward space. Wasn't quite sure what to do with it, so my wife and I decided to put 3 floating shelves just as some additional shoe storage and with the ability to store some taller shoes like boots. And to make those shelves, I started by taking some of the same butcher block that we made the top with and cut them down to a size that fit the space. I then took them over to my built-in router table and routed a channel along the back side and the front side, but not all the way through so that you don't see the channel from the outside. Hopefully that'll make more sense once they're up. I'm then going to use these channels to actually mount to the wall that will have some small cleats that'll attach to the wall and the shelf will slide over, and then I'll secure that with a small head screw. I don't think this is going to be the strongest shelf in the world, but really we're not going to store anything super heavy. It's just going to be 1, maybe 2 pairs of shoes at most. And after applying the same finish as the bench top, we're left with 3 of these shelves, which look really nice, which is gonna match both the bench and our floor, and I think just blend in really well with this. So now it's time to hang up the cleats. Now I tried getting the cleats into studs where possible, but I inevitably had to use some drywall anchors. I'm a huge fan of these big threaded versions. I'll link them down in the description, but they have like a 75-pound rating, which is nuts. Oh man, the finishing feels like it takes forever. But with all of that done, we can finally just remove all the masking, put it all back together, and start using it. And that is a wrap. I'm actually pretty damn proud of how it turned out. It turned out kind of exactly how I wanted it to look. It ended up taking a lot longer than I thought, which is typically how these projects go. But I'm really glad I took the time during all the finishing work because it really shows up at the end. I especially really like how the floating shelves turned out in that corner. That would have just been an awkward waste of space. I think it's really good use of that space and it looks really nice. And by the way, the shelves are a lot stronger than I thought they were. I thought they were gonna be kind of flimsy to be honest, but they're pretty damn stiff. Now, as I mentioned in part 1, at the time of shooting this, it's the fall, so winter is coming up. This is gonna come in super handy now that we live in the Midwest, and I realize why most people have mudrooms. Thank you guys so much for watching. I've got to get to cleaning the shop up, but I hope there was something in this video that maybe you found useful, that maybe you can apply to an upcoming project you have, or maybe you want to replicate kind of what I did inside. I'll try and link everything I used in the video down in the video description below so you can go check that out. I would love to know what you think about this project. Go leave those in the comments down below. I tend to read most comments and I try to reply when I can. I'm probably most curious of people who do this for a living to point out what I did wrong. But every time we do a project like this, it's a learning experience. So now I feel more equipped to go do that again. Last but not least, smash the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video. And if you're not already, consider subscribing. I've got mostly shop videos, but I sprinkle in some home videos every once in a while. I will catch you guys on the next project, and until then, keep pursuing shop greatness.